Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers! Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to yet another biopic retrospective. Dragon, we're giving it a silly name. We're calling it the Bio-Pictionary. I don't know. We'll go with it. We'll see if it sticks. Who knows? I don't know if it's gonna stick. I'm a madman.
Just want to say for the record, I didn't co-sign that.
I know you didn't. But yeah, so tonight, let's see, Dragon, remind me so we talked weird, the Al Yankovic story, and that's kind of the genesis, the jumping off point for us to be like talking about more biopics, breaking them down. Remind me, what was the other one that we did to kind of start things off?
Rocket Man.
Right, okay. So we did Rocket Man, and then we took a little bit of a hiatus for Christmas, and now we're back. I don't know if this is going to be like an every week sort of thing here, folks, because it kind of goes a little bit outside of the lines of what we usually do. But we did kind of set out to at least break down a few more biopics, just to kind of examine how weird is sort of an amalgamation of all of the tropes and styles. And Dragon, I gotta tell you, Tonya, definitely very glad I gave it a rewatch, because it really this really sang on a rewatch, man. It really did. I think this breaks a lot of conventions about the standard biopic. It's still got some elements of it, like the abusive parent, for example, but man, it has so much. I mean, I don't want to say fun in the case of the abusive parent, but there is a little bit of that. This movie just has a weird kind of wild energy to it, and I really, really respect it. And I forget just how much of it, because I definitely remember the talking head confessionals, but I forgot just how much of this movie is made up of it. I mean, oh God, that is Bobby, right?
Bobby Cannavale?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Bobby Cannavale. I can't remember his reporter name, but it is Bobby Cannavale.
Right. So I forgot that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but his character literally does not exist in the movie at all outside of the talking head sequences.
Yeah, well, the idea with him, Tiki, is that he's an amalgamation of all the reporters. So he's like the one character in the movie. It's kind of like Anthony Hopkins in Chaplin, where he's kind of more like James Woods in Chaplin, where he's kind of the he's like the amalgamation of like the lawsuit, but there was no specific lawyer. That was James Woods in that movie. So he's very much all the reporters and all the sleazy tactics the reporters did.
Makes sense.
So yeah.
Okay, so the one thing that I do have to nitpick with Craig Gillespie's style, and it's something that was very much present in Cruella to a much more absurd degree. But I think this guy is a little on the nose with his classic rock soundtrack choices.
But it was very on brand here.
It's a little on the nose, though. It's a little
so was Tonya. That was her whole thing when she
I guess so.
It was intentional.
Maybe doing on the whole. Yeah, Teddy, we are engaged in. Like I said, we're starting we're kind of spinning this off of Weird, the Weird Al biopic, but we're kind of we're experimenting around with it. I don't know how frequent these are going to be, but it's a little bit of a series. Dragon and I are biopic connoisseurs. Anyways, so I don't know, Dragon, the soundtrack thing, it's much more abrasive in Cruella. Like, I have this thing now where Sympathy for the Devil, man, oh my God. If somebody uses Sympathy for the Devil unironically in a soundtrack, like, that song is like the most overplayed, like, okay, I get it. It's the badass person coming in to clean up shop. That song just instantly gets demerits for me when it's used nowadays. And in Cruella, the whole movie's building up to like, do you get it? Now we're doing Sympathy for the Devil. All right, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a whole tangent here. Dragon, what do you think of Tonya?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, finally. I tell you, man, I've been saying this ever since it came out. This film is a Scorsese movie on skates. I love Gillespie. I think I re-listened to some of the bonus features. I think the way you pronounce his name is Gillespie, by the way.
Okay.
I love Gillespie's style, and I love what he's been doing in a lot of his works, or at least a lot of like stuff that's either Gillespie director or Gillespie adjacent. Where I've seen him, like for example, Pam and Tommy. I don't know if he was the showrunner on that, but he did direct a bunch of episodes
I'm
on
pretty
that.
sure he was the showrunner on it.
I think you're right, but I can't recall offhand. I think he had. I forget if he had. Oh no, I know what it was. The writer on this did the Mike Tyson thing. We'll get to that momentarily.
Oh, right, right.
Point I love Gillespie's style and how he examines the humanity at the heart of history and forces us to reevaluate and recontextualize. That's my favorite thing about his style and what he did here in this movie. I think this movie had earned the Oscar nominations with the strength of performances. It was it's very well executed, I felt. And yeah, man, I just went into this thing. Okay, well, it's just gonna be kind of some Margot Robbie fanfare, put her in a movie, you got to nominate because we need big names. But you watch it, like, oh my god, this thing actually earned all these nominations. This was really good. Yeah, I again, it's so weird. The only way I get into sports is through the biopics on the sports. Oddly enough.
This is easily like probably the most compelling sports biopic ever for my money.
I think quite possibly, yeah. Of course, I think a lot of the sports stuff usually gets like a series, but usually in the negative, like like the People versus O.J. Simpson. So not quite the same thing. Yeah, again, I can't say enough nice things about it. I've always really kind of liked it ever since I watched it the first time, and I just found it very very effective. And again, I'm with the needle drop of it all. I mean, I do feel that was in compliment to a big theme of the movie, which is this girl's going to give her all to this sport, and just because of where she comes from and kind of what that represents, kind of essentially being white trash to a degree, or at least begin having the perception of being white trash, that is always working against her. It's really unfair. And of course, fairness and how all that works is very much, kind of pivotal to the movie. But again, it's the idea we're taking something everyone knows. Like Tonya Harding was a joke. I mean, I didn't really follow, the figure skating of it all, but I think in pop culture,
My mother did.
Exactly. I think all of our mothers are
Yeah.
someone in the family always kind of is like checking the Olympics or checking the Olympic figure skating or something.
Like I wasn't as actively engaged in the figure skating thing with my mom as I was with the Beanie Babies, because the Beanie Babies thing was very much like me and my mom being co-conspirators on that shit. Yeah. But I definitely remember enough about it to, remember when Tonya Harding was a big name, and then remember the drama going down. So
yeah, from my Tanya to I tie. Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, I think in kind of pop culture, we always kind of knew, like, oh yeah, when you take out a figure skater, essentially it's a Tonya Harding situation. That's you kind of knew that. But again, I didn't know the specifics of what went down. But usually, okay, someone when you take out the competition in a brutal way, like to kind of help you out, that's essentially that, or just cheating in the book. So she went down in infamy. And again, we give the context here, and it plays rather well. And I gotta say, with Margot Robbie's performance in this feels like in a perfect world we would have gone back in time. Tanya would have come out first, and then we would have had. I don't mean to throw them under the bus here. I'm just saying, in retrospect, knowing what we know with how these movies went, it would have been kind of interesting to see maybe a more traditional Harley Quinn played by Margot Robbie instead of the tatted up sort of like David Ayerized version of Harley Quinn that we then we've kind of done the best we can with.
I think I'm more of a fan of Margot Robbie Harley Quinn than you are, because I think I actively enjoyed her a lot more in the Suicide Squad than you did. Like I really liked that kind of plot cul-de-sac that she ended up in.
Well, I want to be clear. I like her as Harley Quinn. It just kind of still bothers me that we have these, because of the Jared Leto Joker role. We're still working backwards from and we had to tat them all up. And we had to Ayerize them.
Sure, I hear you. I hear that.
But again, no, you're right though. She is good as Harley Quinn. I like that we kind of have her come back and everything. But it's just the fact when you look at her and it's like, and she's still tatted up a little bit because of the David Ayer thing. We can't get past that. But I don't know. Regardless, though, it just feels like that would have been like an even bigger boon if that had all happened right after Tanya, because she's playing essentially kind of like someone in kind of a Harley Quinn kind of abusive cycle of sorts, which is really fascinating.
I can also say that her character in Babylon is very similar to this performance, to the point where it kind of makes me appreciate Babylon a little less.
Okay.
All right. Anyways.
All right. Yeah, that's all I got for kind of my opening here. I guess going into the background.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so this was this whole thing came about because the writer, who has like the best name ever, Stephen Rogers.
Right. I remember when I saw that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the writer, Stephen Rogers, he had written on Kate and Leopold, believe it or not.
A dragon, my God. I mean, you and I feel like Kate and Leopold is like a running thing for us too. It's like it's like the romantic comedy that you and I just unabashedly love, like that and The Night Before Christmas.
At some point, we really got to talk about Kate and
Oh,
Leopold.
we really do, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so Stephen
You
Rogers,
know
he had
what? I
done
think we might have missed the anniversary.
possibly. Yeah, I don't know. Did it come out in 2002 or three or?
I am guessing it came out in 2002. I'm Googling it right now.
No, probably just the
Came out in
spec.
2001.
Oh, we missed the boat entirely on that one.
2026, baby. 25 years.
All right. Anyway, point being, yeah. So Stephen Rogers, he did Kate and Leopold, and he show ran and written the thing that came after. This is very inspired by Tonya. Mike, the Mike Tyson limited series that was on Hulu. I thought was really good. So yeah, so he point Stephen Rogers, he took an interest in the Tanya Harding of it all, and he was working on a documentary, and he interviewed Tanya Harding and Jeff Gillespie. Now, what happened was, and again, these are pretty much the interviews that you see in the movie. So, like those interviews taken are based on those like one-on-one interviews with those two characters. And essentially, they had two as in the movie, they had two very conflicting stories and kind of perspectives on the whole affair, which of course is very much in the legal dispute of it all and all that sort of stuff. So this gave Rogers a light bulb here, like, hey, what this is absolutely unreliable narrator at its finest here. There's a story here. Maybe instead of a documentary, we turn this into kind of a story in which the audience decides the truth ultimately. We kind of play it that way. And Craig Gillespie, he was very interested. When this came to him, he was really interested in the idea of, again, kind of what would become his signature style. Here's the whole recontextualization of history and the big scandals and the events. Of course, Gillespie goes on to do stuff like Pam and Tommy, which again is kind of like another kind of scandal, very much in that 24-hour news cycle sort of thing, not the same thing. And yeah, so basically that was the big thing. Like, let's play with the narrative structure a bunch there. Let's find a balance between the humor and the drama. And of course, they studied many interviews and they studied them very religiously, and that's why we recreated things very much down pat in this film. Like you have Lavana Golden. She's got like that little bird on her, kind of picking at the little oxygen mask,
yes,
little oxygen nose things. Oxygen tube, and you have stuff like, for example, Sean doing the interview in the chair and everything, and also being like a VHS recording because he would have been long past at that point. So yeah, I mean, they did their research on this, and they kind of found a way to kind of weave it in there. Of course, a lot of figures, a lot of intensive skating practice, as you can probably imagine, from Margot Robbie. Now, not all of that is her, because that'd be insane. Because literally, Tonya Harding's big claim to fame is she did the impossible with that triple X.
Sure, right.
So there is some face replacement going on here, and there are some rigs like when we do it in slow mo, as you can probably imagine. Yeah. So again, also the documentary style, it was done in an homage to the Thin Blue Line documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes, I did. I did see that in film class once.
Yeah, so that was the idea there. That's kind of what they were going for in terms of kind of the feel for the stuff. And obviously, they play with different cameras. Like during the wedding, they use, I believe, like, I don't think Super 8's the right term, but they use like the cruddy VHS, kind of like camera, so to make it look. And that always amazed me as watching the movie. I don't know if it amazed you as much as it did me, but it was like that. It's like, oh god, it's like you would see in your actual home movies and everything. It's like the different cameras that we use from like B-roll and behind the scenes to what's end up in the final product. It's always interesting to see the different cameras used. And I guess lastly, so movie came out, did really well, and specifically critically, and got a lot of nominations. Allison Janney, she won for supporting, and let's see, Margot Robbie, she got the nomination for best actress, and I think it got the it didn't get the nomination for best movie. I think it got editing, which probably should have won, but I don't think it did.
Yeah, it really should have. All right.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, obviously, I think we should start with the whole documentary style that this movie's going for, because it's, I mean, it's great. And honestly, Dragon, watching this, you know what kept running through my mind was like, this might be a good way to approach like something with a bit more of a serious subject matter, like a Dahmer, for example. I don't know, like, because I feel like with Dahmer, you like the big problem with that show was that they set out to, you know, at least the mission statement, according to the creators of that show, was to have it be from the perspective of the victims, and the big criticism is that it ends up being from the perspective of Dahmer most of the time.
Well, I think it's like a half and half thing, where the first half of that show is Dahmer, and then the back half is purely the victims.
I mean, sure, but I could just imagine the kind of like this interview style working really. Like, can you imagine Richard Jenkins in this kind of interview format?
I can imagine Richard Jenkins doing anything, Tiki. That guy's great.
Well, I'm just saying though.
Just I hear you though.
Given the context of Dahmer.
No, sure, yeah.
I don't want to just linger on Dahmer. I'm just saying. Like, it's a great format that I almost kind of like am surprised didn't take off more with this movie.
Well, to piggyback off that sentiment, Tiki, is the idea that in biopics, one of the make or break things with a biopic, because we're always looking back on history with any biopic, it's the framing device, and the documentary style is something that it's attempted often, but so rarely does it work. And I think it's one of the exceptions where it works really well, and it makes me want to see more of it. Executed very well, and it's just, again, it's so very authentically realized, in which we're getting all the little details just right. And again, I love seeing like Paul Walter Hauser introduced on like the little TV and everything.
I mean, so let's just call it out right now. Paul Walter frickin' Hauser.
This was his big foray. I'm not saying the first thing he ever did.
He steals this movie, man. He steals it.
I mean, let's be frank. This is why he gets Richard Jewell. This has to be, how he gets that.
And I just think across the board, like the big four in this movie, like straight up, I think it's probably the best performances I've seen from all of them. I mean, that might be a divisive opinion for you because of our boy Sebastian Stan.
I mean, this is it's a very different role than Bucky.
Of course.
I mean, and Bucky is very much kind of an in tandem role with the Captain America films. But you're right, though. This is a really good performance for.
Isn't it trippy that Bucky is in this movie, given the Steve Rogers of it all?
I know, that is really trippy. Okay, well, we know who we're casting.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we're you're right. This is kind of the best performances of each of these actors. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, before this, Allison Janney, her big thing was, I'm sure there are other roles, but I mean, Moms was at this time, I think.
I would say Juno would probably be her biggest role before this.
It's a good point. Yeah, that probably was her biggest role. I guess I was thinking like the longest stretch. I think it'd been a big stretch since Juno to what she was doing. I think Moms was kind of in between that for. But you're right.
Juno was 2007.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Like 6 or 7, I think.
No, I know it was 2007. 2007 was a big year.
Okay. So, 10 years later.
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, the fourth wall call out aspect of this film is really
that is absolutely, like, stylistically, it sings. And I love that they don't overuse it, too.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of do it because obviously it's an interview style. They're going to talk to the cameraman, or essentially the audience. But beyond that, we do kind of stop the story. We do kind of like we pause the story and say, no, that didn't happen. That's BS. It's like, no, he didn't. I didn't shoot him with a shotgun. He shot.
I think Allison Janney is probably especially good at that, at those beats, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, that one's more for the editing too. Like, we just kind of stop the story, and she literally calls out like, "Oh, there goes my effing storyline."
Right. That actually caught me off guard. I was like, "Damn, movie, you're on top of yourself,"
which is great. And that's the thing. I love that it's the point of like, we have to kind of miss Levana before we get her back again. Essentially, before basically to make her impact really felt, we have to, logically, Tanya's gonna have to be away from her for a while, and then she's gonna come back during like the lows moments.
I feel like her character is, I mean, it's such a great balancing act of having a mother who is straight up emotionally and physically abusive, like no question about it.
Oh yeah.
And you hate her, but at the same time, performance-wise, and this is what I'm talking about with the tone of this movie, Dragon, you know, tone, big issue for me, like walks a razor's edge, but performance-wise, I feel like there's so much satire in the way that it's actually done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, with with what Allison Janney does, I think the greatest thing that she does in this performance, especially on a rewatch, when you look at it with a fine tooth comb, is that it's the question: does Levana love Tonya? And I think the answer is yes, but in the most warped way possible.
Right.
Because I think for me, it's like when I look back on it, it's like the two moments for me that signal that she does love her is, and it's very unconventional. It's really fun, actually. At her big moment, she pays that guy to insult Tonya, like, kind of rant against her, like kind of psych her out. So it would basically make her determined to give her best, give her all, and she does. And it's kind of like a thankless thing. It's like, she does this, and I mean, again, it's a really cruel thing she does. By the same token, it's like there's a question of, is it an fu before her big moment, or is it like a I'm going to help you succeed because I deep down want you to succeed? So there's a dichotomy there. And then, and of course, the other moment being like she says, we have that really nice underplayed scene in the diner. The whole like, did you ever like love me at all? Like ever? And she says like, I was a monster to you to help you, essentially saying, I wish someone did that for me because my mom was nice and I got crap. You nice get your crap.
I mean, I honestly, like, my read on everything that she does in this movie, including that, and, keep in mind, this movie obviously is all about unintended, ambiguous narrators and stuff like that.
Unreliable narrator.
Unreliable. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know why it left my brain. It's but my whole read on it was that pretty much everything she's saying is just blatantly just trying to get herself off. You know what I mean?
And then, of course, you also have the fact of this is Tonya retelling this for the most part. So there's a question of how much of that is, well, coming from her and how much that's from the mother. We never clarify that,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. It's very interesting.
Ambiguity is a friend to this film in all the right ways, I felt.
Of course.
Yeah, so I mean, but yeah, also like when we kind of stop it, when we do the pause and skip thing with the narrative, we add additional context here and there. Like for example, this is really helpful. Tonya and Nancy, they were friends, like they're shotgun and beers and everything. So what we do there is here's the on the rewatch I never quite caught that I really loved catching on the rewatch, that the Nancy Kerrigan, because Nancy's kind of like a looming thing here, where Nancy is like, obviously she's kind of, I don't know, MacGuffin's probably not the right word, but essentially she's the event. Nancy's not a character, but she is, the thing that happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And because of that, we can't really develop her, and people put her on a pedestal because, the poor victim and everything. But Tonya doesn't really feel a whole lot of sympathy towards Nancy, and you could read that as cruel, but as we see that, it's like, there's a jealousy there, but it was not like a personal jealousy. It was just like, she was on my level. Like we were shotgun and beers, and we're like, going on tour together, and we were friends. But the way the media plays up because of what happened, like I was always out to get her and stuff. And yeah, so there's a little bit of like an honest disdain for it. And like apparently Gillespie's big thing here is to present honesty, like not to really take sides, just present it as conflicting and ambiguous as it's going to read, but just portray it the way it happens, which is bigger, seemingly bigger than life, but is absolutely true to the way people act. Think about this, like the Albuquerque verse. It's all about why characters do the things they do. Like if Walter White is offered like a get out of cancer free card, why doesn't he take it?
Sure.
And the same thing with with Saul Goodman. Like, hey, you're offered HHM, why don't you take it? Well, he doesn't. It's a question why these characters do these things, and we don't really fully know why. We are left to seek our own answers.
Yep. Yeah. All right, let's get into our boy Dragon. I think the man of the hour, Sebastian Stan. I am honestly just blown away by this performance. I really am.
Let me tell you a really cool real life thing about Sebastian Stan's character in this movie, about Jeff. Let me tell you about Jeff Galili. This is really fascinating. So, in that interview, I believe it's specifically that interview, but in general, like I guess anytime they reached out to him for this movie, the real guy they sat down with. Again, kind of like Jeff as he's portrayed here, as you see, a maelstrom of emotions where this guy in real life years later, looking back on things, there is a sympathy there for Tonya, and he kind of seemingly has taken responsibility, and he didn't like take any money for the interviews or anything. So he just wanted to
Absolutely.
set the record straight. So
And
yeah, it's
that's
just
why
like
I
it
think,
feels
like, even more so than Margot Robbie, I really think that this guy is like the most compelling element of the whole film.
the fact that you sense when he's saying that he loves her, he's not lying, and he does want to protect her and take care of her and wants to be supportive and everything. By the same token, though, there's that turn on a dime kind of like abuse there. That's very
Totally.
real. It's like real life abuse. It's going to turn on a dime. Someone's
But
going
at
to
the
have a
same
temper
time,
and
there
act
is
on
the unreliable narrator of it all,
it.
like, so I am sure that there was some stuff going on, but the film intentionally plays it as pretty over the top, like the shotgun of it all.
And again, it feels like we're kind of like we're kind of threading this a lot through the idea that okay, so what do we know in a court of law? Well, we know certain people testified to certain things. So kind of looking back through that vein, it's like, okay, so what are we saying about this guy as we characterize him? Or okay, so Jeff did this seemingly out of love. So again, obviously there's conflicting stories on that, but it's the idea, okay, so Jeff somewhat orchestrated this. Just think it was going to be letters, mind you, but he did orchestrate this out of love. So as far as it went, Jeff does bear a lot of responsibility on Tonya. So then you go back, then where's the root of that relationship stand? Where he wants to be with Tonya, even if the tragedy of Tonya Harding is that everyone. I guess kind of the theme of the movie ultimately is it's about a pursuit of love and kind of admiration, kind of a love and acceptance sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone is pursuing kind of like I guess love and respectability. Where Tanya wants, she wants love that does not end up with fist, and she wants to be kind of like and
Reasonable.
and she wants to be kind of like appreciate her talents to be appreciated, like her naturally given talents to be appreciated. So basically, it's love and appreciation, and that's essentially what Jeff wants too. He wants the love and appreciation of Tanya, and of course, he feels she gets that Dove Bar thing really ticked him off. And then you have the Paul Walter Hauser character. You get Sean. Sean feels he wants he
And
wants.
Sean is just a freaking enigma. And
Here's what's
he is
fascinating.
like I actually kind of brought up offhand. I had about 15 minutes after I finished watching this movie, so I went out to visit with my grandparents. I kind of just, started chatting them up about this whole case. And like as soon as I brought up the bodyguard, they were like, "Oh yeah, the bodyguard." Like Dragon, I really feel like he is kind of like the big kind of like weird ace in the hole for this whole thing,
Well, I think the term you're looking for is wild. He's the wild card.
Yeah, the wild card. Thank you. Yeah.
And you're right. That's the thing. So that's the fascinating thing about this, though, in the character and kind of like measuring up the characters here with the love and acceptance theme. He has love. Well, it's not love and acceptance, kind of a love and admiration thing. He has love, he doesn't have admiration. He wants essentially kind of the recognition that Tanya gets, but he has all the love that she wanted growing up because you get a sense like his family loves him. The mother's there like, oh, let me get the phone, Jeff. You had a call and like dial the number again. This is Edward. I think the funniest scene in this movie is when Tanya won't take the call. So Jeff and Sean go on a road trip purely for a spiteful last word, purely to go all the way there. And Sean won't shut up. He's just get there and says, "Hey, Tanya, no, F you." And that's the thing. So Sebastian Stan plays so well. One is Sebastian Stan with the mustache. I just want to mention that once. Secondly,
I love how Allison Janney just calls him mustache. That's one of the best running jokes.
Yeah, the effing mustache. Well, no, just the fact that he is, there is a charm there, and that's that. We see the dangerous side of that later, where he gets stopped by the cop after she's been,
the cop scene actually kind of, because that definitely kind of hit a little bit, like how somebody can be both abusive and very charming and silver tongued at the same time.
And they found guns and booze, and they let him go.
Right.
It's crazy. That's the thing. You get that sense of years back.
You know what? I think that's actually probably the biggest parallel I had with Dahmer was that moment right there in relation to, the cops just totally failing to do their jobs.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's the thing. You kind of have like that years later reflecting back and in the interview, you sense the regret on him. You sense it there, but you also sense. I mean, that's the way the movie plays it. Where again, there's somewhat of a main narrative, just for the sake of having a story for the film. That there is the confluence event. It seems to be to me is okay. If it is to be believed, just with what is presented, and I'm not saying, of course, you have the whole unreliable narrative thing, so it's not saying this is a 100% happened, but taking it as it seems. Sean orchestrated the whole, like, he sent Tonya a death threat, so he would basically be a bodyguard, and he could say, "I'm Tonya Hardin's bodyguard," and whether or not he put the idea into Jeff's head or not, Jeff then somehow gets an idea of like, "Hey, let's do let's do a death threat to Nancy Kerrigan, so Tonya will go up in the world." And of course, ultimately, Sean says his whole plan. It's a question of how devious was Sean that he was actually planning on the full, like, the attack from the beginning, or was it just like this idiot just thought, okay, well, what's better than a letter? We're gonna take it out.
Right.
I'm a big dog, man. I'm a big dog. Essentially, that sort of mentality, just the whole, like, yeah. Again, he's a guy. He's a guy in a chair who thinks he's Rambo. Thinks he's like the CIA guy in the chair, essentially. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is I like the reflecting back on it, you get to see that if that is to be believed, Jeff did do this out of love, and then it's the whole confluence of, like, Sean just getting out of Dodge saying it was Jeff, it was him, it was all him, and in reality, no, it wasn't him. At the very least, it was like it was a letter thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say also, I mean, it's so darn charming. That wedding was like, it's so fun. We have like a dual high point of the movie, where despite the abuse, there was, like, they had that wedding and everything seemed really nice and comfy and everything, and it was like we had like the high point of this very humble white trash kind of wedding reception, played to one of the best songs ever with "Dream a Little Dream."
Oh yeah,
and we bring that back at the very end so perfect. I think the end of this movie is utterly flawless, but we'll get there.
No, for sure, I agree. Let's see. So one thing that is really cool, I think, about the unreliable narrator thing is how there's like a few very key specific points in the movie where, because a lot of the time through the framing device, you're seeing Margot Robbie and Sebastian Stan delivering just pretty much diametrically opposite takes on the events.
Yeah.
But then there's the few times where they're saying where they mirror each other.
Yeah, and then you have like the funny thing where the actor's kind of acting a little out of character, like when they're having like that whole tuna can, the tuna can arena.
Right.
Or again, it's basically, apparently there was like a real piece of evidence where there was like her like handwriting about where the thing was going to go down. So basically the questionable thing of like, it's not just the location, it's like the times at which she'd be training, which implies that if that is Tonya Hardin's handwriting, she did literally have a hand on things. But one of the funniest things too was that little, like, the Imagine thing of like how the media spun things out of control and how they falsely reported things as they were initially happening. Like, Tonya did it herself, and we have that bloody, it's like,
I mean, seriously, you never see that kind of shit in a typical biopic.
No, you don't. That's what I'm saying. There's like a fun kind of like hyper realized style here. Like, we can go a little broad, but then we're going to rein it back in and show you again, just to demonstrate what the media was kind of putting out there, which they did. So, also Z and K channel. Did you?
Yeah. He's saying Allison Janney's so damn great at playing Karen type characters. Forgot that it applies to her performance here, but still want to bring that up. Indeed.
Yeah. In general, I don't think it necessarily applies to Levana here, but I don't know, maybe. She is masterful in this, unequivocally. And what she does here, just how freaking harsh she is, and like she's beating children, just like kicks that poor little girl off that chair. But again, at the same time, though, you do see like those little glimmers of kind of support and pride in her. Like, I want to see her effing face.
Sure, yeah.
On the TV when she's doing her waitress job. And of course, the most heartbreaking scene of the movie, the tape recorder.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's, and I love that because it's a subversion of like the usual trope with the biopics, and of course it's one of my favorite elements of weird on an unironic level. I've praised Toby Huss's performance here, where you have the abusive parent, but then you have the reconciliation, and this is just a slap in the face when it comes to the actual reconciliation.
You're expecting the reconciliation, and then it's like the reveal, oh, she's actually saying nice things for a change, and then tape recorder trying to get a confession to sell it to the news outlets.
And it's like that is probably like the lowest thing that she does, and they save it for the last, it's like the last like kind of rubbing salt in the wounds thing.
And the implication is they never see each other ever again after that.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, who can blame her?
Which, by the way, so that to be clear, that scene did happen in real life. Only the location was different. They changed it to kind of like inside the house, where it was actually at the skating arena. So it was at the ice rink. So let's see. I guess something to talk about too. Again, I mean, I kind of said this earlier, but again, another theme of the movie was like Tonya's relationship to violence and the idea you had with the mother and Jeff. And it's so sad. We had that bit in the movie where she says, like I thought being in love meant people hitting you.
Yeah, yeah.
That sort of thing. So they have like the mother.
Jeff, there's a lot of parallels to the violence. I mean, even fucking down to the ending, of course, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of the relationship to fame and violence. And
exactly. Right.
Being the kind of the core story aspect there. Yeah.
Where it's like like I feel like the ending definitely represents like violence is kind of her comfort zone. You know what I mean? It's almost kind of like the only thing she's actually familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it seems like the only loving relationship she really had is when her father left her.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, seriously, I'm pretty sure that's McKenna Grace, right?
Yeah, that is McKenna Grace. Yes.
Yeah, just that one. She has the one really standout scene where she's like, "Don't leave, take me with you."
If you're not gonna leave me. And he does. And his leaves are
it's not. And the thing, like the real hard thing of that scene is that it's not like this guy even was, he seemed like a reasonable enough guy in the hunting scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, where he's not on board with how she's treating her and everything. And it's a question of does the abuse start after the father leaves or not? But actually, no. Well, I
would definitely say at the absolute minimum, there is definitely verbal and emotional abuse going on beforehand.
Well, she made her wet herself on the ice, so that was
right, exactly, yeah.
Listen, I think we saw like that her hitting her with the hairbrush and kicking her off the chair before the father, so it's possible. It's probably Anyway,
that only happened once.
And then, of course, I love how they play the moment where she moves out for the first time when the knife gets thrown. And like, again, you see a twinge of remorse, a slight twinge.
Totally.
Where it's the fact that Levana shuts up. That's all. That's as close as you're going to get the sympathy from her. Just like threw a knife at her, Yeah. So, again, I love how it just kind of like just the utter shock in the room.
No, absolutely. I think that's definitely one of the hardest hitting moments in the whole film, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I guess just to get in there again, because we kind of flirted with it earlier on. Just again, so again, as I mentioned, the music's kind of key in kind of reflecting the important detail of Tonya's story, where again, it's kind of the class struggle in the figure skating world.
I honestly think he just like. With his soundtracks, like it's decent songs. It's just there's a bit too much of it. Like I feel like it almost kind of overwhelms the movie at a certain point.
Even if that is the case, Tiki, I think this movie is the exception. That given that music's always going to be playing during the figure skating, and again, this is like what her musical choices are. And plus, again, we need Dream a Little Dream for how that gets set up, and I don't know. No, it doesn't bug me. Regardless, yeah, I mean, saying between that and the outfits and everything, I think the message is again, Tonya Harding kind of presented America, but kind of a flawed America, and the figure skating, especially in the international of it all, there's kind of an international aspect in that they're kind of building to the Olympics. It's a classy affair. You have like high class music. It's an art form, where this was like despite her exceptionalism, we cannot make her the face of this sport. It'll be like the Beverly Hillbillies. We can't do that.
Sure, yeah.
So again, like, and of course, the skating was flawlessly recreated, very painstakingly, I'm sure, especially getting those face replacements look as good as they do. But yeah, it's the fact that we had that scene in the parking garage where she learns she has no chance at the gold because she'll never because the system will never accept her, and it's crushing, and she goes the lengths to try and put her family together. That's why she reaches out to her mother, and deaf ears, and then she has to go back to Jeff. Yeah. But the triple axel itself, we should talk about that. What do you think about the big triple axel moment?
Yeah, I mean it's like it's definitely a big scene for sure. I like the way that the movie kind of frames these key events.
I mean, I guess I like this fact we take it as like right before it happens, like everyone takes a break and like literally all the interviews like spell out why the triple axel was a big deal. Like, okay, so you got to do that.
Sure. I feel like that is very much a really smart decision as far as the screenplay goes.
Yeah. Also, I think
Bobby Cannavale kind of being Mr. Exposition for a minute.
Of course. And I also love that thing about this with kind of Tonya, at least the way I read it, is Tonya does have kind of a mother figure in Diane, her coach, and it's the
yeah, she does. Yeah, for sure.
To me, it reads as Levana. The reason I think she made herself so harsh in her life is that she, again, not being an affluent woman, having to really work for every penny and all that going towards the kids' exceptionalism to hopefully one day pay the bills or whatnot. She had to be kind of mom and coach, and she was, it's kind of like Burgess Meredith without the charm.
Exactly. One of the things I actually picked up with the coach on the rewatch is how, like, in the third act is the legal stuff is going on with the husband. The husband being the lawyer, she starts to kind of be more and more distant with Tonya because she knows, like, I'm sure the husband is having conversations with her like, yeah, this doesn't look good.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's the thing, but I love that during this big moment, this is after she fired Diane, the original trainer. She had kind of the quieter mouth.
Really, Diane?
Really, Diane? But yeah, but I love the fact that it really reflects that this was Tonya really doing this on her own, practically. Not having the trainer that was looking out for her. And essentially, so this was like her achieving this goal. So this is the high point for her in the movie. Like all the struggle kind of paid off for a moment. It was all going really well, and then of course every time Jeff's in her life, it's like she's putting on weight. She's kind of drinking too much. She bombs a few of the shows.
Yeah. One thing we should talk about. I mean, I think the triple axel is a great scene too, but I think the best skating scene is probably the one where the second Olympic scene where she's breaking down because of the broken skate.
Well, the laces, you mean? Well,
yeah, the laces.
We have like the idea is like she was going to do the triple axel, and then she had like a blade. She blamed it on the blade. And you'll notice this too in the interviews and everything. Tonya, and again, it's kind of a question to the audience, like how much of it is like her making excuses versus how much of it is there is actually something that it isn't her fault. But I think ultimately, again, I'm kind of lean more towards it. Mistakes were made in her life that I think led to a lot of this. So I think ultimately it is on her. But
I think that just as far as direction goes, that one close up on her where she's doing the botched run, and you can tell she's just getting very, very like upset about it on the face. It's great facial acting.
Speaking of facial acting, the scene getting ready to go out there for like the shoelace thing, she did that thing where she's putting the rouge or whatever, like the little makeup thing on her face, and that was all done in one take when she just kind of has that mini breakdown, putting on her game face, like forcing the smile, and then obviously it all comes crumbling down for her. But yeah, it was again like Margot Robbie. Gillespie loves to let the actors kind of like feel the space and everything. That's why in the big scene where she's banned from skating ever again, like that was an improvised scene. Like Gillespie did look at the script during that scene. He just let her go.
Nice. Yeah.
He only had that courthouse like a limited time, so they really had to like kind of get it and just let her go. Yeah, it's worked. And of course, in the facial acting too, like during the triple X, we have like the slow mo going on there too, where she's like kind of like when we see the triple X and then we do the replay and we kind of milk it for all it's worth, set to a nice set to a decent needle drop. I felt, and I like the idea that it's like the first time song is like that's the song probably actually played during the triple X, but in her mind. You have like the Little Girl Bad song playing, like kind of the nice, like, oh man, this is like her on cloud nine. This is going great. Big win for Tonya.
All right.
So I guess they talk about the Nancy of it all and the Bobby Cannavale, the 24-hour news cycle thing. We should probably talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, so just him being an amalgam of all these journalists, and this being like a first for the '90s. Like, presumably, like the first. This is like right before OJ, based on how
like literally, there's like almost like a Rogue One style. Like, hey, we got the OJ story next.
Yeah, here's the best viewing experience, kids. Okay, you ready?
Oh God.
Okay. So you have Tonya. And then you watch the awesome, very lengthy documentary OJ Made in America. Yeah.
And then you watch American Crimes or American Crime Story. Is that the name of it?
What do you mean, the OJ biopic thing?
Yeah, the one with Schumer.
Okay. That People versus OJ Simpson.
Right. Like that's kind of like the finale. Like you watch the really long documentary to get the facts, and then you see the dramatization.
Yeah, and then probably Dahmer in there for good measure. But I forget Dahmer.
Sure, why not?
I forget if Dahmer was before or after the Tonya affair.
I'm pretty sure it was before.
I think it was too. So I guess if you want the really long experience.
Oh God! All right.
Anyway, no. But seriously, it's the idea if you do kind of a double feature.
It's like the biopic nerds, like equivalent to watching all the extended edition Lord of the Rings in a single night.
One scandal with an athlete to another scandal. There's your twofer. There's the twofer.
Maybe like Moneyball is like the light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure. Anyway, so yeah, the idea, and this is my favorite detail with Bobby Cannavale here. I love how he plays this because the idea he's just playing a guy laughing at this from the outside.
Yeah, no. I really like him on a couple different levels. I think, first of all, I think he has the perfect amount of screen time where he makes an impact on the movie, but he doesn't overstay his welcome at all. And I think he is very much kind of like both. There's a cynical element of
he's
how
the
he
cynical audience member essentially.
Yeah, how he is laughing and everything, but at the same time, I definitely feel like he's probably one of the core kind of comic relief components of it.
Yeah, I mean, but also there's kind of like a real sleazy thing he cops to when after that big the big betrayal scene with the mother. Tanya's running out to chase after her truck, and he has this is like a real dirtbag press thing that they do sometimes. Well, I called to have her car towed, so we can get pictures because it was a 24-hour news cycle.
No, didn't he say that he actually slashed the tires?
Yeah, like he said he would do this sort of thing. He'd slash the tires and have the car towed.
Right, yeah.
That's the thing. He would slash tires to have that's being the reason why the car has to be towed and everything. So But yeah, so it was just real sleazy tactics that the press did enact, and still now let's be frank, they still kind of enact today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So the Nancy Kerrigan of it all too. I love how we portray this situation. They got all the details right of like the dumbest crime ever committed.
I love it. It's just like a symphony of just things that you should not do to cover up a crime scene.
What cracks me up is that it was such a simple plan. Just
right.
Just have something. It's low level mail fraud. Just have it mailed from a different state. That's all it's supposed to be. And this guy thinks this is a good idea. Yeah, this will help cement her record. Remember, Eckhart thought this is also the quote Batman '89. So I can get in there once. Eckhart, oh God. But no, it's a fact.
That's a deep cut.
Yep. And a Gordon line, by the way.
God.
Angle Gordon, but again, it was the only good Pat Angle Gordon performance. Anyway. Regardless, just the fact that he thought he was going to get like a whole bodyguard enterprise out of this whole thing. He thought he essentially would have been Richard Jewell's wet dream.
Right, exactly.
Which in retrospect makes it even funnier. But no, it's the idea of like, hey, I'm gonna call. He calls. I forget if it's his cousin or not. Essentially, he calls a guy. He's either, I think he's somehow related to his family. That's who he called. And then the guy got cold feet on doing it himself, so he hired a guy. And that guy is fully incompetent because he goes in there like, don't let him see you. You go in there and you give her a whack, and then you walk out. Basically, like Pacino and The Godfather. Essentially, is what the plan was. Like it would go unnoticed, but what he does, he hits her, he panics, he's all sketchy looking, and then true to life details, headbutted the glass.
Yeah, he headbutts the glass. He drops the weapon.
What cracks me up though is he has a weapon that, by the police and everything, is designed to break through doors and stuff.
Right.
Okay, the collapsible baton. One of the main uses is crashing through glass and stuff for breaches and stuff. And
Dragon, I feel like true crime buffs will get a kick out of that scene just on the basis of like, okay, kids, here's what you don't do. How many heirs can you spot?
And not just that. Another true life detail that is you'd have to see to believe, and we saw it. Tackles a random guy who was nothing.
Right.
Not really. He's not even really a witness. Like this guy exited a broken door. It's not like he was trying to. He was coming at him or anything. He fully just went. The guy was afraid he tackled him, and then he tossed the weapon, which again has his prints and everything on it.
Why would you do that?
God. And then he runs. His idiot friend, who lost the nerve to do this himself, is scurrying away, and he's like, no, let him get in the car. Oh god, it's ridiculous. And so it's and then Sean thinks, and he's like an idiot. He's bragging that this was all his doing. He's telling everyone he knows that, oh yeah, I did that.
I think he's just like a smooth operator too.
He told his parents and everything.
Oh my
and
God.
celebrating and everything, and oh god, it's so. And of course, it leads to a really great scene with the two of them, for Hauser and Sebastian Stan, where they have that scene, the Golden Buddha, where the FBI is listening and he knows it, and he whispers, like, you made your bed, so lie in it. Of course, he's much more violent and just really just mean spirited the way he says it, but yeah, and honestly deserved. I mean, he kind of deserved that
for sure.
Yeah. All right, so again, for me, the MVP moment of the entire film, short of the ending, is that fourth wall call out, which essentially is Gillespie's thesis statement for why he's doing the whole movie.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
this is when I was watching this, man. This gave me chills in all the right ways. Like, oh,
absolutely. It's almost eerie.
Yes, and I loved it. Just that fourth wall call out of like Tonya, basically after the story's been told, I believe right after the Kerrigan thing has been told, and he basically says like, yep, all that abuse, and also the irony too of the movie, which is not lost on anyone, I think, and I think it's great, is the fact that the idea that Tanya's been abused by everyone in this movie, we've seen depicted very brutally, and that we're building to the punchline that, again, through the skewed eyes of Tonya here, potentially, she gets hit one time and America stops. I get hit constantly and no one cares. The cops don't care. No one cares. No sympathy at all. But Nancy gets one bad hit, and it's all over the place. Anyway, so she has that fourth thing where, and you get to abuse me too, basically telling us, the audience, our reason for watching this thing, and the whole Tonya Scania, the whole reason you're watching.
How long we just hold on her just staring at the audience is just.
It's chilling, and again, it highlights the humanity of Tonya Harding, and the wonderful thing of what we're doing here. Not all biopics do, or like it feels like a really, almost like somewhat an interactive experience. It feels like you're getting to
totally.
With any biopic, you should get to know your subjects personally and intimately. Otherwise, why not just watch a documentary? And we get to do that here. And just that call out from the subject of the documentary is so rare. With we rarely do we even break the fourth wall during biopics ever. So this is really big, and there's just facing the context. And you guys now know the full story, at least ambiguously know the full story. Make your own judgment calls there, and how great are you? What are you doing to me? And again, it was a bold move for any director. Even Gillespie is a little intimidated by this. The fact he's going to call out the audience and say, "You're masochist." Well, not masochist, but you're sadist, audience. And of course, we have this great visual.
And again, Dragon, I think Dahmer could have benefited from having a moment like this.
Yeah, no, well, sure. When you look at it that way, yeah, we probably would. Still, though, you have this bit where we have it. Kind of is very well told. It's a little on the nose, but I loved it. Where you see her literally as the butt of the joke with David Letterman, like doing like his top 10 list, and we pan to her like cooking her like TV dinner in the microwave, and I like the. This is where the on the nose part comes in. End is on the microwave after it's done, cooking the food, like dun, 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 and she's done. It's right at the end of the movie. you know. Anyway, so and also I like that she pointed out that Kerrigan took second, and it looked like she stepped in poo.
I really love that too. Yeah, for sure. Because like throughout the whole movie, one of the things that I kind of picked up on was the fact that she never does get a medal. The best she gets is fourth place. And so the whole thing where, Kerrigan just being oh God, I love it.
And this was Kerrigan after the knee.
Jeff's kiss.
And this was her after the knee thing. So this was like her saying, all that. She still gets second place. She gets a silver medal in the Olympics. This is still a great, and despite certainly it's still a great thing. And I love how it kind of makes you, the audience member, wonder, again, like it is in theory, it's almost a Curb Enthusiasm where it's a terrible thing to say, but she's not wrong, where it's like kind of in retrospect, it's like, yeah, she, saying that she's a poor loser is one thing, or at least like, she's a bad sport is one thing after everything happened to her. But, I think she's right. Like, she did the best she could and still got silver, That's nothing to sneeze at.
So honestly, like all the moments you're bringing up are great, but we need to talk about. Of course, I don't know if you're probably. I'm assuming you're lumping the sentencing in with the ending, right?
Well, I was going.
Okay, that's totally fair.
So yeah, why don't you take lead on the sentencing though? Why don't you?
Oh my God, it's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it's just like I really feel like all the ambiguity of the story kind of gets washed away in this moment, and we just see just nothing but the raw humanity of Tonya Harding here.
Yeah, absolutely. Where again, she's like everything's essentially stripped away, and the fact that they waited until after the Olympics because they didn't want the PR nightmare, that really kind of goes to say that again, ultimately the deck was always going to be stacked against her. She was never going to win.
Just like her just pleading like just send me to jail, don't send me.
I can do 18 months.
And then I can still skate,
Yeah, because that's all she had, and we see it by the end of this
movie. And I think just the irony of like she is like definitely the least culpable person of this whole thing, and yet she got by far the harshest sentence when you look at it from the perspective of just how much it, like I don't want to say it ruined her life because it seems like she's doing okay for herself based on the text at the end, but it certainly like derailed her life.
I mean, it took away like the things she loved, the things she loved most, which then she replaced with other things she loved most, like children, like
right,
which is good. And again, her like the idea that she made it very clear in the end credit text that she wants everyone to know she's a good mother, which I like that. But yeah, I mean, even before that, think about this. It's just the fact that Tanya's relationships and everything. It's the fact that everything just kind of goes down the toilet. In which it's like, hey, she's the relationship, the violence, and the fact that after something good happens, and when we set her back with something bad happening, it's like, hey, right before the FBI comes in, little girl asks for autograph, and she encourages her to skate, and of course, all that's taken away from her.
Right. Yeah.
It's like it's all taken away. Like, I can do 18 months, and it's just utterly heartbreaking, and just taking that away from her. It's like the only release, like the only time life didn't get her down was when she was specifically on that ice, and she can't go there anymore. And the fact that she essentially trades one ring for another one. She trades the ice ring for the boxing ring, which then brings us to the flawless ending.
Indeed. And I think I already pretty much said my piece on it with the whole, like, I feel like the ending is kind of like a commentary on the cycle of violence in her life, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I just love the fate for Tonya, which I can't say I love this story twist, but no, it's not necessarily that obviously it happened, but I like the way we've kind of packaged it together here, in which we've decided to end on this moment versus like, Tonya, then she goes in other careers and she has a kid. Like, we don't see that because it's not a dramatic ending. It's the fact that unable to be in the ice rink, she goes to the boxing ring, and the fact that we intercut it with the boxing and that relationship, the violence, the fact that she gets knocked out spectacularly by that one boxer, and while she's like spinning in slow mo, we have like the blood spurting, everything. We cut to her essentially at a low point in her sports career to the highest point that she's still thinking of, when played to again another high point in her personal life with "Dream a Little Dream," which again for me one of my favorite songs ever, which I love when it's played. So just the fact that she's thinking back to that moment as again, it's so perfectly intercut, and I love the detail of we see not the cheering audience in the arena when she was doing the skating, but to everyone cheering for her downfall, because the whole good guys, bad guys sort of thing, where it's like they're cheering for her as the bad guy, and it's the fact that she's basically saying truth is BS, like calling out the unreliable narrator thing. If everyone wants the truth, like Tonya, did you do it? Tonya, did you not? Well, this is my truth. This is what happened. And the fact that after all that beating, she takes up, she's spitting on the white canvas. She gets back up, and you look for a brief moment for all the fancy footwork, and for a moment, the boxing ring looks like an ice ring with blood on it.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. It's flawless. Okay. Chef's kiss. Credits.
Fucking credits.
Yeah.
All right, so just really quick to wrap things up, I really wish that more biopics would kind of color outside the lines like this, because those are the ones that you and I are interested in covering here, however many we do get to, and however frequently we do get to them. Because I do, of course, there's some pretty solid movies that stick to the formula, but I really think that this one and a few others that we're kind of planning on talking about are very much of a different breed. I really think that like the biopic formula has such a distinct kind of beat by beat structure to it that it's been parodied a number of times. And it's just really cool to see something like this that just really throws all that. And I almost kind of feel like this movie is a good kind of counter programming to Weird, because obviously it's a lot more serious of a movie than Weird is, but it's still got that kind of like tongue-in-cheek, unreliable narrator sort of quality to it. And also kind of playing with genre conventions and calling genre conventions out. So yeah, I'm very much glad I rewatched this.
Yeah. I wonder if Scorsese ever watched this.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know,
because we know what movies Scorsese doesn't watch, unfortunately. But I wonder if he'd like this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with his general stance, but I'm saying I'm a little burnt out on it myself.
Well, no, I'm not trying to drag that into it. I'm just saying we know what movie. I wonder what other kind of movies Scorsese watches. I wonder if this thing, which is very directly, you get a sense this thing feels like very inspired by Scorsese. Again, he operated in kind of an odd kind of niche in the biopic sphere when you think about it, because his things were historical films, and they were, because of the mobsters, they had to change the name, so they're very directly inspired by real life and are in essence biopics, but not quite biopics. And I don't know, so it kind of makes me wonder, like in this movie, if there was like an inspiration there, just given the vibe of the film in terms of like the filmmaking and how we're going to bring things to life, and maybe just kind of some kind of being inspired by the greats on some level, a bit of a Jake LaMotta level to Tonya by the end of things, not just because of the boxing, but the hard living of it all and the abuse. I don't know, but yeah. So Tonya is just seriously one of the just a stellar film, and honestly, it makes me. I'm so eager for more of Gillespie's work. I got really excited, and that's the whole reason we watched. Honestly, the whole reason I watched Crow, if it was learning that guy was doing it.
Right. And his direction was definitely the best part of that movie.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm always down. When I see Gillespie's name pop up on things, I'm very interested, especially when I'm seeing like these, the limited series that his name is attached to. I want to do more biopics because he does an excellent job.
Yeah, I'd rather see him do biopics as opposed to... I'm not saying Pam and Tommy was bad by any means. I enjoyed it.
Well, that was a biopic, essentially.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I feel like Pam and Tommy, like, by the end of it, it was kind of like, all right, I feel like we've kind of, like, mined all that we can mine out of this topic.
So basically, you're
saying... Dragon, that's kind of like a stance I have on a lot of limited series nowadays.
Well, so basically, you're saying if we're going to bring Gillespie back for more biopic stuff, we should keep it in the feature runtime.
I think his wheelhouse is the feature. Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I support that. Just give more biopics, Hollywood. Listen, Hollywood, look at me. Give him more features. Give more biopics. Okay, he's really good at them. Give some biopics. Okay, thank you. All right.
Like I feel like John Lee Hancock is like the guy that you go to for really good biopics that paint by the numbers but are still pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And Craig, Gillespie is very much kind of the more of the maverick of the genre, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, really quick, thanking Teddy, ZNK Channel, and Sonia Patoja for joining us. And I'm just gonna throw it out there, guys. If you have any biopics that you are interested in seeing us cover, I can't guarantee that we'll get to it right away, but we are certainly down to accept audience requests. So I'm interested to hear if anyone has any particular biopics they'd like to cover. Go ahead and shout that out in the comments. And have a good night, everyone. See y'all later.
Eckhart, oh God.